everyone. Good to see all the keen beans back so quickly after lunch. Okay, buzzwords. I think the consensus over the last couple of days for a few different sessions is if our industry, the one we love so much, is good at anything, it's coming up with new buzzwords. So we should all be very proud of that in one way, I guess. But what we might do is just to bring up and support the notion is this slide that I actually boosted from Graphite Digital. And, the slide.
Behind it.
There we go. So I actually put this out to another Australian actually and suggested to frame this panel with a version of bingo that's the Australian version of bingo, which is essentially everyone has to do a shot each time a buzzword is mentioned. But his reply was, well, that's all well and good, but by 10 a.m. in the morning, most of us would be dead. So it's pretty prolific, and it just seems every year we find another one and add one more on before we've even generated consensus on what a previous buzzword was or conquered the actual buzzword itself. So today for this particular session, we're going to discuss how much have we moved beyond the PowerPoint and actually changed how we work or how customers perceive us. So we're going to talk about what's rhetoric, but what's also real, and where we've actually seen buzzwords trigger actual transformation. So before we do dive in with our panel of experts, we're going to launch the word cloud. We want to get a read from the room. What do you think is the most overhyped buzzword in our industry? We'll see if it reflects our own. So please take a moment to to jump in. I don't know what that divorce... Oh, right, yes, that's my yeah, of course. There we go. I like that. I need to wear my glasses.
Transformation.
Omnichannel, yeah. That would have been a chart topper for the last maybe 6-7 years. Omnichannel is still featuring very prominently.
Steve.
That's Morgan Shaw. Get out. I know it is.
AI.
That's very kind of you, Paul. You can stay. Okay. All right, it's an interesting one there. Omnichannel leading from the front, fairly predictably too. But what we're going today is unpack two particular buzzwords that have frustrated most of the industry, I'd say the past decade. And we're going to just talk about them and whereabouts we are. In fact, is it a buzzword or has this buzzword inspired some actual transformation? The first one we want to discuss is patient centricity. Now, I remember when I first heard this word, I was on a platform in London in about 2007, and I went, wow, what a fantastic word. That's finally, yeah, it makes sense. Let's listen to the actual patient. Panel, where are we? Almost more than 15 years on in our journey, in industry in our journey as an industry in patient centricity.
So, I agree with you. It's been used a lot, and I think when it was coined, it made sense for us because we needed to come back to the patient. We were so focused on the treatments and our competitors that we needed to go back to the patient's needs. But now, 15 years on, I think the patient has spoken. And to be honest with you, the patient said it's doing it on its own. It's creating its own websites, its own communities. So that tells me that actually we should be starting to look into working with the patient and not for the patient. Because I feel like somehow we forgot what the patient actually needs. We stopped hearing it. So I think that working with the patient, having that seat at the table will be critical for us in the future.
Yeah, I can build on that a few examples. So I agree throughout the last years we have overused perhaps the terminology. But anyway, I also identify some areas where we do work with the patient and try to collaborate with them and engage with the patient to make sure we are actually delivering something that meets their needs. One example at Takeda, for example, is when we develop any digital solution to support our treatment areas, that we actually start there. The first thing we do is to ask the patients, work with them through their patient journey and try to identify in this specific disease where exactly are the pain points that we could perhaps support.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about the fact that we moved the needle significantly over the past 15 years. Like if you look back about 15, 20 years, you could probably say what's good for the shareholders and the patients were fundamentally contradictory to each other, right? We realized that patient centricity leads to future revenue growth, leads to value creation for our shareholders. So that's a significant shift. But in terms of where the gaps are right now, if you were to think about it, and this is very fundamentally, right, it's about, and I'll give about 3 areas here. One is simply the way we create materials for our patients. The metric over here is health literacy, and health literacy is the degree to which individuals have the ability to find, understand, and use information and services to take health-related decisions for themselves and their families. And a couple of data points here. Health literacy in the US, 5 out of 10 individuals in the US are not health literate.
I'm surprised it's that high.
In Europe, again, it's about the same number. And I'm not even talking about the global south, sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia. And what we need to do over there in terms of being more patient-centric is to start creating patient materials which have a readability score of grade 6, because it's about basic maths and language skills. That's one. Second is around the way we create our patient journeys. They're very linear, beautifully designed from diagnosis till maintenance, right? But in real life, patients in their healing process take 2 steps forward and then they regress. They're not linear. So when you start designing your patient journeys to develop your brand plans, if you start designing non-linear patient journeys, that could be a starting point. And the third is, I think the way we measure patient outcomes, health outcomes, right? Patients don't measure outcomes in clinical outcome terms.
No.
If I'm feeling better, if I'm able to do my daily routine, I am well now. So I think it's about also looking at success metrics for patient outcomes in very simple terms. So I think we've reached a significant point, but if you do those first principle changes, it'll help a lot towards moving towards patient centricity.
Indeed. Dirk?
You see, Steve, you are a very disciplined panel.
We
go one by one. So,
this is more of a, from like where you're from, the structure.
I would like to look at it from a different angle, and I can do that because I've been a long time at the side of the business and now from a vendor perspective. And I would like to make the analogy like when I was a kid, I was collecting stamps. I think that our industry is also trying to collect as many stamps or badges, of which patient centricity is one.
Yeah, good point.
Like omnichannel, like all these others which are standing there. So for me, I think, and we've mentioned it, we should measure. You can only manage what you can measure. So I would like to see a criteria for success if the industry is really patient-centric is which percentage do we as a group see as acceptable to say, hey, we are taking the turn and the average of the industry is really looking at the interest of the patients and is starting from there the whole way up. Is that above 50% threshold, 60%, 70%? Yeah. It doesn't matter. So I think we should be a bit more ambitious because otherwise we risk that there will be a couple of leading companies, but the biggest pack will stay behind. And that obviously is not in the interest of the patient. No. So I would like to look at it from that angle.
I think it's a really good point to be a little bit more ambitious and perhaps benchmark, because there does seem to be some companies who are doing quite well and emboldening patients with the whole nothing about me without me and involving them. There's some companies having a red chair in the room, which is maybe a fair step back from that, and then there's some companies not listening at all and going with their gut instinct, which we spoke about yesterday. I guess I'm interested to see, we've 15 odd years since the phrase was termed, at least from my memory. What does the next generation of patient centricity look like? Where are we going in the next step? Does anybody have any thoughts?
So when you posed that question during our discussions, I was actually thinking about it very thoroughly, and I said to myself, okay, if we look at patient centricity, the focus is more on the business side of it. So if I look at it when the clinical trial has ended, that's when we start to become patient-focused. That's when, we have to understand the patient journey, we have to think about it. I would like to move the needle earlier. in the R&D already. So when we are already in the midst of thinking about the science of it, to actually hear what the patient has to say. Because sometimes the science is leading us in one direction, but actually the patient needs something completely different. So that's where I want us to potentially go forward.
That'd be a great scenario to ingrain that sort of thinking right at that level of the phase of development and that type of thing. I agree.
I would like to build on an experience from the industry or the vendor side again. You know, we are also talking about customer success management, which you see popping up now also in the industry, which is quite new and encouraging. But I would like to make this leap from customer centricity, because that's again the healthcare professional, the healthcare environment, the institutions, to a kind of patient centricity kind of approach. So meaning also that you really give patients a voice within the pharma industry, and that you really have a function like you have a marketing manager, a customer success manager, that you have a patient success manager. And that should tick a box before anything goes out of the company, being it from an educational perspective, being it from a development, innovation, renovation perspective. So I try to look at it a bit more from that angle, because I have the luxury to look at it from a bigger distance.
Sure. Let me flip it around and answer your question from a different perspective, to say, what should patient centricity look like from 15 years from now? So if you look at the commercial model right now for pharma, right, it starts with the patient getting diagnosed and then competing for the best therapies. How about we flip it around completely to say, even before I'm diagnosed as a patient, you start engaging with me, right? Based on my genomics, based on my anonymous patient longitudinal data, you engage with me upfront even before I become a patient, and you use that to tell me what potential risks I have based on my behavioral lifestyle about potential diseases. It's like, the model is called verticalization. Like when you go into Amazon, they own the channel, they own the products, they own the cross-border payments, and they own the full life cycle. So I think a fundamental shift could be when you start owning me as a patient across my full life cycle.
It's a really good point. I think everybody agrees it's an exciting place to start venturing into. So with patient centricity is obviously still an area where we've got a long way to go. The buzzword hasn't quite delivered, as well-intentioned as it may be. The second one we just want to talk about is one where we have seen some transition, digital health. But I mean, it's everywhere. The term is ubiquitous and used in so many tenses. What does it even mean anymore? But I know we're lucky to have two people experts on the panel from Takeda today, and Takeda enjoys a well-deserved reputation in digital health initiatives and success. Can we speak to some success stories that in the digital health from you guys, and what we can perhaps learn from that, and transitioning from buzzword to something tangible?
Something tangible, yeah. So when we were thinking about digital health, or at least from my perspective, when I'm thinking of digital health, I think it has to have three components in place. First of all, we have to understand the patient. What is the problem that we are solving for the patient? Secondly, we have to involve the HCP. We have to co-create with our physicians, because it has to have clinical relevance for the physician. And the third piece that I recently, or not recently, a year ago discovered through some of my work is we have to embed it within the healthcare system of that patient and of that physician. Because if it's not working within that ecosystem, it's hard for them to work with it. So with that, actually, Rita and I had a bit of a discussion over the last few days. And there are a couple of success stories in Takeda. One of them is called H2O. It's Health Outcomes Observatory. It's a pan-European patient-reported outcomes in real time option that really supports patients to provide outcomes in the real time, in the real setting, versus having them reported in a clinical trials, which is completely different. And another thing that personally, as someone who works a lot with the local teams, I find it very interesting is in our German team, they co-created together with the patients and the healthcare providers a solution for their ADHD patients. And that actually got reimbursed through the DIGA reimbursement system. So actually it's a solution now that the patient, provider, and the authorities are all claiming it's really relevant for us.
And of course, all the success comes with some learning. That's a recent success, but we've been trying to do that for years. And a few years back, maybe when we talked digital health, all brand teams run and get their app. Oh, I have my patient app. So we also spend a lot of time to clean up and really assess what is actually the value of these apps or services that we are providing. So cleaning up is also very important and challenging. Why are we doing it? And I have, if I can summarize, 2 big learnings. One is that alignment, right? What is the solution that you're trying to bring, going to solve for the patient, for the customer? How does it align with your therapy area strategy? How does it align with the resources you have, and how does it align in the ecosystem and the partners that we are working with? And the second point is around capabilities. And that was actually learned through one of these initiatives where we brought in someone with a strong digital product management experience, and there was a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of people in the company, where when we develop medicine products, we take years and years of studies, make it perfect, safe, efficacious, and when we launch, we launch. It's really studied for a long time. While when we're doing digital, what you want to do is get an MVP, get it in the hands of the patients, of the customers, get it tested, iterate it, learn from it, improve it as you go. When you launch it is when it starts. And that's a completely different way of managing products, and it's a different from our pharma DNA. So those were probably the 2 biggest learnings so far.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that you say that the journey at the start of digital health in pharma was basically, yes, everyone needed to have an app. We're putting the cart before the horse and just making apps for the sake of making apps, and the App Store still today is littered with the most well-intentioned apps that didn't land because they weren't really based in what the need was. So yeah, Takeda's obviously learned from that, taken some lessons and moved forward. I think it's a good point too, talking about all these buzzwords do have their foundations in such genuine well-intentions. So what is it? What's the secret sauce? So what makes a buzzword actually stick and ignite meaningful transformation? Is there something that we can inspire the audience with a path to follow, to see something through rather than move on to the next buzzword so quickly?
Coming from Belgium, we love mayonnaise. We say the mayonnaise need to stick. I didn't have that on my bingo card. I would like to say is really having clear success metrics and execute. Practice what you preach and communicate on that. The learning points out of it, what is working, what is not working, because that will be to the benefit of everyone sitting here. And that will bring us to, are we really patient-centric, are we really customer-centric, et cetera, related to the previous points made.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I think it's about aligning it to a particular need, like we were talking about digital health over here, right? So you mentioned correctly there are probably 1 million apps over there, and barely 2% of them have more than 500,000 monthly average users. So it's about whatever buzzword, whatever you're creating, is it aligned to a particular need which meets the expectations of the HCP and the patients? Like even the case of digital health apps, I think the industry is now moving towards prescription digital therapeutics, PDTs, right? Which have an input mechanism. You take in the input parameters from the patient and you provide care through an output mechanism. Again, I think the focus of digital health is moving beyond just the apps to maybe chip in a pill, right? So you put that in a patient's body, it works with the stomach sensors, it provides the data to the wearable, it goes over the cloud to the HCP, you get a personalized medication in for the patient. So I think it's about creating these enablers which are aligned to a patient's need, which improve the health outcomes.
Sounds good. So we could have talked all day about buzzwords. We focused on 2, one that worked, one that didn't, and talking about now what we need to make them stick. So what I wanted to do is just finish with one sentence. Pharma I'll ask you each to finish the sentence rather. Pharma will finally move beyond the buzzwords when it...
Execute on it. Execute.
when it starts to combine the promise of these buzzwords to create that patient impact.
Execute and measure it, measure the impact.
Mateja?
When it moves from trends to true unmet need for the customer that is patient.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Folks, please thank this panel for packing so much into such a short amount of time. Thank you very much.